Tim, good to see you. Welcome back, buddy. Did you have a good hiking trip? I saw the pictures. It looked gorgeous. Where were you?
It was it was great. I went to first Belgium for like a day and a half, and then Luxembourg for 2 days. Which
Nice.
lots of hiking, lots of castles, nice scenic villages. It's just very good.
Nice. Now I know the Netherlands is quite flat, and Belgium is just the southern Netherlands. Did there get to be more hills in Belgium, or was this hiking a very flat sort of hiking for most of it?
I think if you look at like a topographical map, anytime like a hill starts, that's where the border starts. So the you get
So is that how
some
you ended
kind of
up in
hills.
Luxembourg? Did you hike there from
Yeah.
Belgium?
No, we drove across, but it's like anytime that you want to see some height differences, you want to get a small vista, or you want to see some rock that isn't just, I don't know, some dirt. You want
Uh-huh.
to, yeah, drive across the border and see some nice things. So, pretty good.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah. Do you have any further plans to go out hiking or to enjoy nature upcoming?
Well, I was in Belgium and the Ardennes 3 weeks ago. I was there last weekend, and I'll be back in 2 weeks. Just
All
because
right.
it's close to home, and you can drive
Yeah.
there, and you don't have to like plan well ahead. You can just say, "Oh,
You could
I
just
want
you
to go
could
there."
just show up for a day trip and have a
Yeah,
good time. That's
I mean
nice. That's nice.
it's similar if you were to drive 3 hours within the state and see some natural beauty. That's I think what the
Yeah.
Ardennes is to me. So
I mean,
uh,
yeah. I mean, here in Washington, we'll often see on a clear day, we'll see Mount Rainier, this massive snow-capped volcano dominate the skyline. And it's the funniest things. It can sneak up on you, right? Because the day's a little bit hazy, a little bit cloudy, you won't see it at all. But if things are clear, you might be like, "Whoa, there's a mountain there!" Like it just jumped out
yeah,
at me. And it's so big, it dominates the skyline in its direction, but it's still like a 2.5 hour drive to get there from here. Yeah, but definitely worth a day trip. Very very beautiful area. So long as you don't feel a little squeamish about being on top of a volcano.
how has that ever gone wrong? It's just
Only occasionally. Yeah, this last year I went camping in an area where Mount Rainier was to our north, Mount St. Helens, a volcano which has blown up within the past 50 years, was to our south, and there was another volcano to our east. And I'm like, man, we're really surrounded here. If any of these goes off, it wouldn't be good for us. Fortunately, none of them did.
and then
There's not much
that's
there's not much
good.
volcanic activity in Europe, is there?
There is like form of volcanic activity in like the Eifel region, which is very close to the Ardennes. So I'll be there 3 weeks from now. And then there is some activity, I think, in Italy. Once in a while, there'll be some I don't know, news posts of folks running downhill. And then of course we have Iceland, if you call that Europe. So that one.
Yeah, I'd say it mostly counts. Iceland is very beautiful and very volcanic. Have you been to Iceland?
So, not yet. No, it's on the
Oh,
list.
it's very cool. I recommend it. It's a convenient stopover if you're flying from the United States to Europe or the other way. Is it doesn't quite cut the journey in half, but you get two moderate length flights rather than one excessively long flight. And you step off the plane and you look around at the landscape and you're like, oh, this is where the alien planets are filmed in sci-fi movies, right? Because the landscape, the geography, it looks like another planet. It's pretty fantastic. Yeah. And there's
And,
puffins,
and,
and puffins are very cool.
and
And
I
also look like
imagine
small
it
aliens 'cause it's amazing that they can fly with those tiny little bodies and those tiny little wings. And you see them flying, and you're still like, I don't quite believe that this is real. This looks faked somehow.
yeah, yeah, it's been a goal of mine to make that my stopover instead of New Jersey, what it usually is.
That
Which,
would be it's better than New Jersey. I mean, sorry, New Jersey, but Iceland is a cooler stopover.
so yeah, on maybe trips to come.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, so
So then,
what do we have news-wise for this week?
news-wise, it's like I've been mostly out, so there's been relatively not a lot to catch up on in terms of news, but still we have a couple things I wanted to share with you all. So with first off, of course, we completed the release last week, and now finally we have a short summary of some things new, and it's been a good part helped by community contributions. So we finally did a release of the Jackson version 3 migration recipes that were contributed very helpfully by Sean Sullivan some time
Nice.
ago. we've wrapped it up with our own Jackson version 1 to 2 migration recipes, such that now you can span that whole version range to do your migrations there. We've also added some Gradle best practices recipes, or a better way to say it is we've bundled them up. So we had a few already, but now you can run them very conveniently. We've had some folks contribute back recipes for folks moving to Flyway version 10, where instead of getting one big blob of a binary, now you have to have separate ones depending on which database engine you're using. So very helpful to have some automation help you there, and different folks pitching in for different databases to bring that to our released and maintained recipes, and then a few smaller things still as well. So very pleased with all of that. It's all available using the latest rewrite recipe file. And then next week we'll do a new release, and I'll try to get it in before the show, just to tell you all what's new then. So, and then also new is we published a blog on backpatching. So we've announced this some time ago that it's an effort that you can now do using Moderne. So not as part of OpenRewrite, but using Moderne, where you want to have a distribution mechanism to accompany the backpatched dependencies that you have. So if you find that you're using, whether you wanted to or not, an outdated version of a library or framework, and there is a critical vulnerability, then of course there has historically been some vendors that will give you a patched version of that dependency, but then leave it up to you to roll that out to a couple hundred or a couple thousand repositories. Which of course, this is where we shine with the tools that we have at Moderne to not only give you a fix, but also give you a way to see where should I be applying that fix, and then roll that out with small changes safely applied through, of course, OpenRewrite and Moderne. So if that's something that interests you, definitely reach out, and we'll see what we can do to bring that to your org. And then finally, we have a very exciting update. We're finally able to tell that Mark Heckler is joining Moderne. So Mark has been a friend of ours for a number of years, for me personally, and wider still for others as well. And then he's going to join us as our Senior Director of Field Engineering. So if you want to get in touch with Mark, you want to know what he's doing or what Moderne is doing, then we'll be able to share more across the coming weeks and months. But it's very excited to have him on board and just continue to grow and share what we can do with Moderne. Very pleased with that, and we're likely to have him on the show anytime soon. So, all good. So that's it in terms of upgrades that I had this week. And then with that, we want to bring on a co-worker and friend of ours, which is Merlin. And Merlin, we've had him in on I think 3 months ago in March. But Merlin is our
yes.
Java developer.
Yes.
Open source enthusiast. I think we first met at conferences 2 years ago or so, 3 years ago in Basel 1. And then you're an Oracle Ace associate, and on top of that, you also fly plates. So we have 2 pilots at Moderne now, which is a lot of fun to have.
Wait, hold on. Who's the other pilot?
The other one, of course, be Mark.
Yes. But so does Mark. I think he's flying different kind of airplanes. I'm more of a glider pilot and very small pilot thing, but I can teach you to fly. So next time you're in Europe, drop a message, and we try to bring you in the air on your own.
Do you have to do a certain number of hours per year to maintain your instructor status?
Yes, but it's a sliding window. Happily. So basically every day when I think about teaching people how to fly, I have to check if I'm current enough, if I'm able to teach them, if I did enough hours in the last 24 months. Sometimes I think it would be great for some consultancies as well to have a sliding window of, I don't know only old coding, I know new technologies as well.
Yeah, that probably is sensible. Yeah, if you're going to be a consultancy, helping people to, I don't know, migrate to the latest version of Spring Boot or like redo their architecture. It's like, well, when was the last time you did microservices? Was it within the last 24 months? Have you, when was the last time you migrated someone from SQL to NoSQL or back from NoSQL to SQL? Did you put in enough hours on that? Yeah, I think that's very sensible. So let's see. Our main topic today is mapping release train dependencies with OpenRewrite. What do we mean by that, Merlin? Like, what do you mean when we talk about mapping release train dependencies?
So, what is the release train is rather clear. It's a very common term.
Yep.
Sometimes a hated term because a release train is certainly like Deutsche Bahn. It's unpredictable if you have to take 2 hours or 7. I'm the lucky one. I only have the short rides, but therefore I don't have the right connection to work. But Tim has the other way around, unfortunately. So internal problems. But
you get to enjoy lunch somewhere in a city you never thought to visit just because of Deutsche Bahn.
Yes. And like trains, our releases usually have different outcomes, different stations where they stop. For OpenRewrite, for example, we have to release the core before we release any artifact on top of that.
Yep.
But this chain imposes problems because we have to wait. For how long do we have to wait? Can we release Spring when we have released Java, or do we have to release a different archetype first? And I don't think we're alone with that, because it's a very common pattern to stack things on top of your internal API.
Yep.
Name it an internal framework, internal helpers, or your modeled your domain once very good, and from there on build on top of that. It's all the same. Once something releases, you might have to release different things. You might have to release the maintain the order of releases, and that's why I think a release train and getting an idea of your release train, how your release train really looks, it's very similar to a metro plan of London. Similar confusing and similar much colors, and always you're wondering how the fuck do I get from here to there? There's no straight line there.
So some confusing loops in there as well, where you think, "Oh, that shouldn't happen." But
yeah.
Spoiler alert: we don't have loops. Thanks God, but
mostly, yeah. There's a little bit of weirdness with the rewrite Gradle tooling model, but we'll leave that aside.
Exactly that one.
Yeah. We take that apart for today.
Yeah. We'll leave that one aside. Yeah, it is a challenge, particularly as we have now dozens of modules, and any of the internal teams that we work with at large enterprises may have just as many, if not more. And I think it's very common within a large enterprise for not only our like some dependency you use that's coming in from the open source community out of date, or not just out of date, but on a wide range of versions, that you also get internal libraries that are spread on a wide range of versions, throughout the company, making for all of the same kind of support challenges and headaches that you get when there's not just one version of your thing in use. Where if you're maintaining internal company core lib and someone's complaining about a bug, I've certainly had the experience of realizing that I've now debugged the same issue 2, 3, sometimes 4 times because, well, I debug it once and we fix it, and then someone else comes along, perhaps long enough that I've forgotten about the investigation the first time with a slightly different issue, and I debug it again, and I'm like, oh, I already fixed this. You're just on the old version. So Merlin, you think that mapping and understanding your release train can kind of help with that?
The release train probably not, but the same information used to derive the release train, because what you're there are two things in there you're describing, making sure that being aware of which version of a dependency you are using.
Yes.
That's another big problem, to report the bug to the correct version downstream to your platform team. But what I'm more focusing on with the Metro plan is knowing what you're depending on and what you're influencing on all the way up. Because as I said, our own team sometimes loses the connection. I'm done and fix here, released it, then now we have downstream problems. The same problems exist at customers. Whenever they're building something on top of our framework or on top of different frameworks and stack them together, they always face the same problem. One team releases and writes a patch note. Yes, we are done, and hopefully everybody reads it. No, as always, it's documentation.
No.
You only read it once you have problems.
Right.
So yeah, you don't know what you're affecting. If you would know up front when you're known, okay, I've changed this artifact and it's influencing this 5 artifacts, you can directly either address the change there and make sure you don't introduce upstream failures, or especially notice some members of the next teams or the next team to, here's your upcoming change, here's the recipe, ideally, and apply it up front. Otherwise, we will have problems here. And that's the plan with the Metro plan. It's kind of got more. I got more motivation to put work in there very recently, because I had the problem and other had the problem that we have to release bug fixes in some artifacts, but we don't really know what do we have to release again up on top. And we have some utility there, but it is not that accessible for the wide, and that was the bigger plan, to have an updatable, up-to-date vision of that, and that everybody can be aware. I will change this artifact. What will I be possibly working up front?
Yeah, and that kind of foreknowledge of the consequence of changing any particular action or any particular piece of code can be very valuable to have when you're considering making a change, particularly a breaking one, or in a code review scenario, because there's plenty of code that changes that might be innocuous on their own, but if you know how it's going to be used, you might be like, oh well, this is used in such a way that this is going to be a performance problem, right? This thing you've added is in a hot path in some other service that depends upon this, so you should reconsider this change now. So this kind of mapping your release train is also about, as you say, knowing the consequence of changing something early on in that change, and could be useful to have in your mental model for code review and for just avoiding operational issues before they happen, or for resolving operational issues when they do happen. So how do we get started with producing a mapping of a release train with OpenRewrite?
First of all, we have to be aware of what every repository is dependent on. And we need an organization to look on. Because if you only look at one recipe or at one artifact, you will not learn a lot. So yes, one project has to be built to be that you have your dependencies available. But you need to know the bigger picture. For that, you have to know what dependencies are defined, which relationships to parents are available, and that's the main idea here. So we are analyzing first what dependencies are available, what artifact IDs do our project at hand at the moment has, and then from there on aggregating that on top. Plus, build in this recipe, thanks to the AI agent. I use some time to write the recipes, because it's also an experimental project for me to get used to the AI capabilities of writing recipes. He suggested that do you know we have all data available to also denote defined but unused dependencies here? So a way to decrease coupling. And do you know we could also, if we take a little bit more, analyze the coupling, the weight of a coupling, so the number of usages there. And that's all kind of built in there. Something we will see today. Something is not yet ready baked. So to make it easy, we can probably start with the outcome. So I don't want to share the whole screen. Yes, but I don't want to share the whole screen.
Sure.
I just want to share the outcome. Let me quickly move you both to the other screen so I can see you. So that's the ultimate outcome of it. At the moment, it is a static HTML page that is generated with based on recipes with some Kotlin code here and there, and some D3 visualization. That should be possible to transform in a visualization in the Moderne SaaS as well. There, it would be even more helpful as a dashboard or dev center component.
Right.
So what we're seeing here, this is based on an OpenRewrite analysis on all recipe artifacts. We have a lot of recipes. We have a lot of connections, really nearly 4 to 5 times more connections than we have artifacts. And luckily, we have no probably unused dependencies. Probably because we only look at the code at the moment. We don't know about runtime dependencies. So whenever something is loaded via reflection or at runtime, we don't know exactly what it is. So still, what we end up is this, let's name it forest. It's less of a tree of dependencies. Every greenish dot is an artifact. And every blue line between them is a dependency. Every red line would be a parent, but Gradle don't know the construct of a parent really well. There's some kind of dependency management in there, but it's not that common. Same for probably used. What's really cool about the D3 approach is that we basically have every knowledge available. So when we say, okay, I will change something here in the OK HTTP version here. We see it has 2 ingoing and one ingoing to outgoing relationships. Can click on that and we see we probably have to run again the recipe markdown generator to update.
Yep, that produces
That's not a big
our
surprise
documentation.
Because yes, it's not a big surprise. Every dot you will click will hopefully end up in a change in the markdown generator. But again,
might be interesting to click on the markdown generator and see if we have any dots that aren't connected to it, because we pop up new recipe modules all the time. Have we forgotten to plug any into the documentation?
Yes, but the
clicking.
Yeah. There's the OpenRewrite generative AI.
It is not.
Yes, it is. It is not in there. So yes, with the generative AI, it's not included. Good call. Good call. It is not included in the markdown generation yet because it's not really released or publicly available. So no,
makes sense.
It's not here in the markdown generator. What's way more important for us is, for example, we are updating somewhere here, migrate Java, a very common recipe artifact for us to do changes on. Whenever we do a bug fix here, you see we should check at least a few more. If we do something in the core, cross-checking,
that's everyone,
everything is green. Surprise, surprise. But there's a very interesting information that we have to from time to time remind ourselves on, that this is our ultimate core. So if you change something here, be aware that you are breaking nearly everything. And this visualization only contains the OpenRewrite elements. It's not that there are on top, there's no on top recipe references for any customer, any open source
right, anything outside of our
recipe
organization.
artifact that is not outside of OpenRewrite. So yeah.
And
what's pretty cool here, I know Tim has done similar things. It also ends up with a list of hey, you have to check these 15 different artifacts when you're changing templating, and when you're done with that, you probably also have to check these 3 because they're depending on the artifacts you're releasing because you have to release.
So the level 2 is talking about distance away from it, that those level 2 nodes depend on one of the things that depend on rewrite templating.
Yes.
Got it.
It's not perfect yet. It's the transitive dependency level. So from there on, I recommend whenever something occurs here, fix it, be aware that there's more, and go from step to step until you bubble all up. The analysis is not yet that sophisticated that it will level out all of the, Tim, correct me, I think 12 levels of our stations of our release train at the moment.
Indeed.
But it gives us, I think, a very great understanding of what impact our very tiny change will have. And I suspect that I'm very certain that organizations with way more than 30 artifacts, 100, 1,000 artifacts, will have some kind of a similar internal cluster of very influensive artifacts here.
And of course, the neat thing here is that it's a recipe that you've run, and you can probably give it some parameters and try to identify the same for Moderne rewrite recipe modules or even a different org. So.
Yeah. So what recipe or recipes did you use to produce the raw data here?
Yeah, that's the next interesting thing. Let me quickly reshare. The recipes are not yet publicly available. The repository. They're available. They're on a private repository in OpenRewrite, and on OpenRewrite on my personal GitHub, because I would like to carefully revisit the AI written recipes before publishing it as an. Here you can see how to work with OpenRewrite and how to write recipes with OpenRewrite. Or at least add a disclaimer on top of it. So a lot of the recipes that you find here, that you will see in the next minutes, and that you will see when you open up the repository, are AI written. Because again, that this is a repository I created heavily using Claude to get familiar with it. But it all ends up in this one declarative recipe that gathers the basic information around. So what it does, it finds all project IDs. So for every project that is in the repository, we find the group ID and artifact ID, because that's the ultimate key here. We find parent relationships for Gradle and Maven. For Gradle, I think it uses the plugin mechanism and the dependency management. It's not working 100% yet, so I have to carefully revisit the test as said. And it analyzes the unused dependencies. That's a recipe here, where it again uses a already defined recipe, the dependency insights recipe, which gives you a full report of all your dependencies you are using. So if you run a rerun, all of these. It's just run a recipe, run away, and I've done it for the OpenRewrite organization. So when we want to do this for Moderne or for your own organization, it's just one mod CLI command away, and for OpenRewrite it takes up, I think, 2 minutes or something without parallel. So even faster if you run it in parallel. So it's kind of great.
Right. So there's a lot of interest in using AI to write recipes. I wonder if you want to show any of what you did to get Claude to assist you here.
So I felt a lot like being back into software architecturing and managing teams and getting teams to the point where they do the correct team. So it feels more of having a very fast-paced team of juniors that you're giving kind of precise problems. And they're coming up with things around this. Very important things I've done is I've took the OpenRewrite documentation, included it into the repository, and said, if you have any questions, here's the documentation. So you don't have to query the web and use Google. You have all your information here. And based on that, it's very hard for us to really try to be precise. What is your outcome? What is your idea? And what are the exact boundaries? So use declarative recipes up front as much as possible. Use existing recipes as much as possible. And if you want to write declarative imperative recipes, keep them small. Let them do one thing and one thing only, and not 5 things in parallel. Use declarative recipes for that. After a few days, I realized that it was that Claude was able to learn the exact same things from our documentation, because these mantras are available in documentation not only once but numerous times, and it was like, hey, that feels like a very good practice.
Yeah.
And we're talking a lot about the data, and if you're just looking at OpenRewrite states it is a tool for large scale refactoring code manipulations. But that's only one part. And I think for software architecture, the way less interesting. The more interesting part is we can use OpenRewrite to query our data in a very precise, very, very accurate way. Because we have this LST construct, and this LST construct can be visited by a visitor, and the visitor sees everything around there, very type safe, with a cool API. And from there, we can generate data tables. We are looking now at the find Maven project IDs recipe, one of the recipe that is extracting the data. Especially it is getting the group ID and artifact ID from Maven in this case. And it is storing this into a data table. And data table is a very easy columnar data representation, similar to the outcome of an SQL query or so. And they're arbitrary. You define them on your own. Just extend the data table, define a row, and give them some data around. Very easy, to be honest, to write it down. And for the recipe, because for this recipe, we are looking at Maven project IDs. We are, of course, visiting Maven, and Maven is an XML. There's a visitor for it. We look at the document and try to find the group ID and the artifact ID thing based on an XPath. And if it is present, because sometimes it's not present, I know in our project it's always present, so we don't have to guard here very expressively around and have some fallbacks. We just say, hey, dear data table, I have a new row for you with the group ID and the artifact ID. And to be a little bit more OpenRewrite stylish, how we write OpenRewrite recipes that are somehow using the prefix or the concept of finding or querying, we're setting the result set found. It's something to check yourself to write better tests. A very common pattern that something that is called find usually produces an output in terms of data table and gives you a result in terms of here, this line I have found. Into the other recipes that are written, I wouldn't dive into it because they are way more complex than finding Maven and Gradle IDs here.
Yeah, totally. I wonder if you want to share. So some of these like best practices of guiding this the LLM or the agent to operate, and you wanted to. These end up in a Claude.md file. Maybe you want to show that to the people, so anyone interested in following in your footsteps has some good guidance for their agent.
So basically, Claude is very tries to train you to do it. Project view. Just open the project here.
Right now, I still just see the visitor
presentation mode.
Okay.
Here. Whenever you spin up Claude, somehow it is lacking, I think, because of screen sharing and too many open tabs. Claude trains you or sticks you whenever you open Claude.
Mm-hmm.
In your terminal. If you have Claude Code, you have the ability to integrate IntelliJ in it. Whenever you open it, it asks you, should I initialize myself? Should I make myself familiar with this surrounding? Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
this one. And it, here it was there. Then it reads through all your project. Basically, the thing we would do whenever we open a project, we would do the first 1 or 2 hours, or should do the first 1 or 2 hours, going through the project and learn the very basic things. How to build it, how's the development flow, what's the architecture, and all of this it is producing right before you. What I've done, I had there's a memorization thing around it. So I told it we want to do a test-driven approach because that's the way how to write OpenRewrite recipes in the proper way.
Yes.
We want to always start with the test first. We then write a recipe. We prefer existing recipes. We prefer declarative recipes. And we have the documentation available here in the rewrite documents example. That is the rewrite docs repository simply added as Git submodule here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is directly available as code. Claude sees it and ingests it directly. Mm-hmm. One thing here, if you want to use Claude in your IDE, always make sure that it also has not writing only the tests first, but writing the recipe and executing the tests. I learned that it is always a manual step. And yes, I remember that back a few years when I was learning that test-driven development is really a cool thing.
Uh-huh.
I had to remember myself to run the tests very often before I get used to it. And it feels like the same. Training your AI agent to write your tests, use existing stuff, don't invent the wheel yourself, and run your tests once you're done. Otherwise, you're ending up with a solution 5 minutes in, and then say, have you run the tests in the last minutes? Oh no, I will run them real quick. And then Claude takes another 20 to 30 minutes to fix all the things around it.
I do note that you don't have a step 5 actually run the tests in this list of test-driven development. Might that be why it had to be a manual step for you to tell it to do that so often?
Yes, at the moment, yes. I have different repositories where I have this first step already added. Here it wasn't. It is not yet. I still trying to figure out how to deal with our repository hopping we do from day to day. Because Claude seems to be, or AI agents in general, seem to be very focused at the moment on, we want to help you to develop in your project.
Yes.
That's cool, but that is only cool if you have one or two projects. If you're developing like us in a multi-module is basically the wrong word, because multi-module use people with 2 to 5 repositories. We are using alone in the OpenRewrite world 35 different repositories. It's a way different task to train Claude on every of them. Every time I have to add the submodule, every time I have to add the Claude markdown file. So we have to come up with patterns here. Probably one pattern will be in the future that we always have our documentation as code also added as submodules and also committed, which, if you're looking at infrastructure and documentation as code, should be there for at least a few years.
Right.
If you're following things there. And probably the Claude markdown file will be part of the repository in the near future, because it definitely helps around there to get your stuff done.
It occurs to me that you can use Gradle's composite build feature to group together several repositories you've checked out into one that you can, load up in IntelliJ, and you could like create a Gradle settings file that's like, I include, rewrite testing frameworks and the rewrite core and rewrite docs and all of that into one unit that you could load up into IntelliJ, and maybe that would work. Just that might help if you are trying to get a repository crossing scenario done. But I know that increasing the amount of code you have loaded up for it to potentially consider or peruse through can cause its own challenges.
Yes. Now that you're saying, I know that IntelliJ, that's something I have to try tomorrow. IntelliJ has the ability, like Eclipse already had 20 years ago, to open up multiple projects now. So you have your working space with multiple projects in it, and IntelliJ can open all of them in some way. Will be interesting if Claude via the MCP protocol can access that, and that probably solves the problem. Not with the markdown file, with the Claude MD, but that's project specific anyway. But for cross references, I also find out that for general questions or general debugging tasks, taking the OpenRewrite, the real central of complexity in OpenRewrite, to generate there the code and then move to the correct artifact is way easier in producing better results at the moment with there. But I'm just using Claude Sonnet, so probably there's a model above. Probably this model is even more capable of it.
Yeah. Jonathan was a strong proponent of Opus.
Yes.
Oh, my headset's running out of batteries.
And if it's really that matter better, like it listens, it appears to me, that could be a game changer here, because it will definitely, at least for everything open in the open source world, everything that has an open documentation, that will be great to write recipes. At least a very good start off.
Yeah, I've had good results last week with just running that Opus 4 model in parallel on 3 different projects while I tend to other projects. and I was able to produce more than I could review in the same space of time. So that was a bit of a new challenge there.
Yes, reviewing and stewardshiping the AI models will be the new challenge. Yes, definitely. And you need a level of seniority here. Maybe one last thing, after we have the created the data tables, we have this Kotlin scripts. They're also available just for them that are looking at the repository in the near future. You can run this. It is loading. It is loading all the data files that all the data tables that we are creating up front, and transforming it into the raw data for the D3 visualization directly, so that you're in the end up with the very cool with the very cool visualization here. So all of this is just one recipe run of a few minutes, one notebook run of I think 20 seconds, and a reload of Safari away to upgrade to a new organization. And once I've continued there, and probably have to transform that into a dev center component or an even more integrated way, it will be way easier for yourself to understand the impact of your change and the possible downsides of your change, even if you're not knowing everything.
Yeah, this looks really helpful, especially with like being able to pinpoint and stay ahead of these types of issues where the downstream effects aren't known, especially for folks walking into an organization new, and they just to have that collective knowledge of, can I change this thing or will it break downstream? Then being able to answer that yourself with a recipe run and this quick visualization should be great.
Yes, and all of this is a static HTML page, so we could publish it, or every organization, every project can publish that on their own, and make people aware, hey, you're working in a very complex scenario. If you're changing this, have a look. What's blue there? Be aware, a change here will change a lot. So maybe
Sam, your audio, is it picked up? No?
Sam is gone.
Guess he'll be back.
Okay.
I guess with changing the battery, and it was a small
probably.
Let's see. Yeah, you should be able to.
Better. Yeah.
On some headset batteries and got into a state where I could hear you, but the browser wasn't connected to the microphone anymore. Who knows? Yeah, so I just thought it would be cool that, as you were saying, getting it into the SaaS. It also strikes me something that that Madi could eventually be uniquely positioned to help with, being a recipe aware AI assistant and agent. It could be enlightened to better know the consequences of any particular change it was suggesting than other AI tools, which, as you've pointed out, can be very focused on the one repository they're in and not the broader context or the implications of changes in that repository. But that may be interesting developments to explore in the future. Let's see, any kind of like final topics of conversation, points that you wanted to show off that you haven't covered, Merlin?
Sure of not, but maybe a few comments in the end. I was in the beginning, I was thinking there would be some kind of the first attempts to bring OpenRewrite to architectural work around there. But in the end, I looked a little bit at the recipes, and most parts are already there. So a lot of things are there. We have recipe scanning for licensing and solving licensing issues. So
Right.
with the knowledge about the dependencies, we know if we're adding licensing informations there, it's very easy to do so. We have security analysis and fixes, which is a big concern of on the architectural level. There's one proof of concept recipe in the comprehend code, which uses an LLM internally to determine the used architectural or coding patterns, like visitors and factories and stuff, so that we have an condensed view of what is used in this in this part of code. We have technical depth qualification there with the metro plan for coupling, and I know Jonathan is working on something for cognitive complexity around there, which looks very promising and very faster than something, and a very interesting thing to add to AI agents. But because the code they are creating are sometimes it's working, it's fulfilling the requirements, but it's getting be easier possible than it is resolved there. And what I think is that we should use the data more. We have a lot of data here, and there's a lot of area to explore for architectural stuff. Like for every connection we see there in the diagram, there is at least one class that is using this connection. If it is just one class that is using one method there, it's probably a good idea to move this method or this class to another package and get rid of the connection. Otherwise, we will end up in an even bigger mess in a few years. So that will be the next steps, not only knowing probably unused, but probably to identify the methods or the classes. Potentially be candidates to be moved and resolve the coupling issue here. To be more, to get ourselves again back to better performing, because we don't have to worry too much about coupling. And also for every other organization as well, to know what to move and to make an at the moment analysis and stop looking at diagrams that were drawn a few months, 2 years ago. So that's the ultimate goal here.
Yeah, because having an up-to-date view is always way better than the sketch that was done on a whiteboard and photographed for you 3 years ago when the project started. So
yes.
Yeah. And I can already look forward to we have like a rewrite analysis module, which we're considering re-implementing in the rewrite. I forgot the name of the new module that we're working on internally. And then just being able to click here and know where to go to update the code where that is used and swap out the new thing would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Merlin. It's pretty cool that you put this together. Appreciate the tips on how to productively use AI agents to write OpenRewrite recipes, and it's a great demonstration of how you can not just change code, but ask and answer questions to better understand it, and then change it, of course. But yeah, good stuff. I like that visualization a lot. I look forward to seeing similar things making their way into the product, so that they're but a click or a query away. And yeah, thanks so much for coming. It was really cool.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah,
Happy to see you next time again.
So then, next week we'll be back with continuous profiling. We'll have a friend of ours, Mohammed Abelainte, on the show, who's from Spotify, and he's going to talk about the missing piece in your observability puzzle. Very much in line with the session we had at Code Remix. So hope to see you all then. And then, until then, all the best.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.